In the leafy suburb of Chislehurst, there lies a secret. Running underneath the feet of many residents lies a network of caverns that over the years have provided many uses to the area. They have existed in some form or another for thousands of years and hold many secrets. Join us now to discover but a few of its wonders as we journey to the city beneath the soil. What you see here is a map of the Chislehurst Caves as they are now, a series of caverns that extend underneath much of Chislehurst and stretch for over 23 miles. The first recorded mention of the caves occurs in a charter in 1250 AD, but it is believed that this system began over 8,000 years ago. The caves originated as a series of mines for flint and chalk, and quickly grew until their last recorded use in the 1830s. The caves originally existed in 3 separate sections, but over the years these were joined together. A Dr. William Nichols theorised that each section was built by a separate cultural group. These were the Druids, who created the first tunnels and used the caves for various religious reasons. The Romans, who used the rocks to build many of the famous Roman buildings in the area. And the Saxons, who were the first true flint knappers and mined extensively. Whatever the basis behind these theories, they provoked great interest in the caves and brought a great amount of tourism into the area. There have been tours in the caves for nearly 150 years, since the landlord of the Rising Sun, now the Bickley Arms pub, began to show guests around the never-ending passageways in 1858, just as the mines were abandoned. Here guests would see a world they never knew had existed just beneath their feet. There have been many entrances to the caves over the years, but now only one remains, here at the specially built tourist centre run by the current owner, Jim Gardner. The tours in their present form happen every hour on the hour, 7 times a day. When your time finally comes, a guide will collect you from the waiting area and you will embark on a 45-minute expedition up to 120 feet underground. The only form of light source whilst on the tour is one oil lamp shared between just a few visitors. The experience down the caves is something that many people do not forget. So join us now as we begin our journey into the city beneath the soil. Our journey starts with a modern development in the cave's history. Its use as a venue for various concerts. Between 1966 and 1972, bands such as Pink Floyd, the Rolling Stones and Jimi Hendrix played a special gig down in the caves. They left a lasting impression on those who saw them, including one of the current guides, Paul Andrews.
The band I used to see was like a biker band that used to be called Dumpy's Rusty Nuts. They used to play quite regular.
To gain a greater insight into what it was like to play in such a strange environment, we spoke to the lead singer of the band, Dumpy.
I played there once in February, again in June, but the one date I can remember, actual date, more than anything, was the 27th of July, which was my birthday. I think it was because the guy that used to run the caves found out that it was my birthday, so he put me in, instead of doing it once, like 6 monthly, he thought, well, we'd put him in because we'll have a birthday party sort of thing. So it was like a Dumpy's birthday bash more than anything. It was good to play down there. The main problem that we used to have was the sound was pretty good actually, because the stage was like, whether it's still there now. You go through the initial front gate and then you got a small corridor you went down, then it opened up into a big cave. The stage used to be on the right hand side, which was just like a hollow in the wall that had a, scaffolds with concrete just thrown in it, and that was the stage. Of course, concrete stages are brilliant because your sound is so positive. You know, you ain't got no droning from hollow stages and that.
Caves were great. You know, I remember going to the sound check with the drummer, and just testing out the acoustics down there. We wanted to know what drum kit was going to sound like before everybody else turned up with the guitars and the amps and everything. And I remember banging this snare drum to see how long the sound would last, and it lasted for a good minute before the sound disappeared. So we're thinking, oh, this is going to sound awful. You know, the acoustics in here are going to be awful. The band's just not going to sound good. But by the time we'd actually got everything up and running, it sounded really, really good.
The worst problem was actually the dust. And, I mean, you could have to be cleaning your leads for like a week after. You'd suddenly get one of your leads and it'd be caked with all this horrible dust. And all the back of the amplifiers, you used to have to take the backs off and clean them all out. Because yeah, it was good. Damp atmosphere, you know, but of course with the hot sweat of the bodies and all that, I mean, all mixed in, and by the time the beer was flowing, everybody forgot about it.
The atmosphere is absolutely electric down there. We was all told that Hendrix had played down there, Led Zeppelin had played down there, Deep Purple had played down there, you know, a while before we did. So we was all kind of itching to do it, but by the time people came in and we got past the first couple of songs, you know, because of nerves and stuff, it was absolutely brilliant, and people was really, really enjoying themselves down there as well. I've been doing it ever since 1981. I've been doing a lot of gigs. I've been on tours and stuff, and that is the one gig out of hundreds that stand out in my mind as being the best one I've ever done. And that's not just because you're filming it, that's an honest answer. Because the atmosphere down there was that good.
So our journey continues and brings us to the underground bar, which was open when the gigs in the caves were playing. Up to 8 bands would play in the caves at any one time. This was made possible due to the natural shape of the caves, which allowed gigs to happen without any interference. Up to 300 people would attend and drink at the bar, which came fully stocked with taps and with a full seating area for guests. Those who attended the gigs found it a very different experience, and many were upset when they closed in the late 1980s.
If they was to start that up again, I'd be the first one there, like booking myself to play there, because it is such a prestige place to play. There is no other place like it in the world. There's no other gig that I've done that comes anywhere close to the atmosphere down there.
The time that the caves spent as a musical venue has literally carved its mark forever in time. For every band that has played here has signed this wall, a reminder to all that they were here. There have been many various artworks around the caves, but by far the most amazing is this. An intricate carving that took an entire year of work to complete. This magnificent piece of art is the work of Sandy Brown, a New Zealand art student who came down into the caves alone during her spare time and created this. Despite its ancient appearance, this carving was only completed in 1995, and clues to this are obvious. The tower at the bottom, a clear rendition of Canary Wharf, and the symbol of the double helix serve to preserve the fusion of old and new for as long as the caves exist. Now from the most modern developments in the caves to the most ancient. Not much is known for sure about the original builders of Chislehurst Caves, their identity shrouded in the thousands of years that have passed since. The theory put forward by Dr. William Nichols is that the earliest sections were excavated by Druids and used for various religious ceremonies as a temple. The Druids celebrated various astronomical events such as equinoxes, and it is believed that on these days young children were led down the caves and sacrificed on these altars. The Druidic priests then offered the blood of these victims to their god for prosperity and good luck throughout the season. The most amazing thing you can see here is exactly how the caves were formed, the marks from the chisels still present in the walls, showing every single blow as the workers excavated this marvellous structure. It is said by some that the sounds of these tools can still be heard in the caves today. However, this is just one of the stranger stories told about these ancient caverns, where many ghosts are said to reside. Like many places with such a long history, the caves have their fair share of ghost stories. Many people have been fascinated with these tales over the years, including a local ghost hunter, Tim Emerson.
I've been ghost hunting for about a year or so now, officially. I've been interested in paranormal things and events and things like that for probably a good sort of 10 years or so now.
By far the most famous ghost story is that of the White Lady, who was drowned in the 1800s, right here, in what is now known as the Haunted Lake. For many years strange things have been reported here, including a white light appearing from the water. The many sightings that tours reported led to a challenge, to see if anyone could last the night by the lake.
I first decided to investigate Chislehurst Caves when I had done a bit of research and I'd found out about these ghost hunts, these supposed ghost hunts that they used to run once a year, these overnight ghost hunts. And basically I was interested. I would quite like to spend the night in Chislehurst Caves. So I went down there to actually have a chat with them and see how feasible this was. Where I found out that they no longer run these overnight ghost hunts due to an incident that happened in the 80s where a couple of the staff members actually got injured on an overnight hunt. And one of them was actually taken to hospital because his injuries were quite severe. This obviously intrigued me to no end, and I decided I wanted to do my own personal investigation into the caves.
The main phenomenon that visitors experience is strange lights on photographs, more commonly referred to as orbs.
An orb is very sceptical views on what actually an orb is. If you spoke to the camera companies and people like that, they will tell you that an orb is a malfunction of the camera caused by the electronic components inside the camera. They won't acknowledge it as being anything else. If you speak to people who believe in kind of spiritual worlds and general ghost hunters and things like that, they will tell you that an orb is a spirit, a floating spirit. And some orbs are, different colours, and this can supposedly indicate the intensity of the spirit or something like that.
There are many other sections of the caves reported to have ghostly visitors, including a murdered cavalier and the sounds of horses echoing through the passages. Some of the sightings came when thousands of people flocked to the caves seeking safety from German air raids in World War II. Whether or not this was just hysteria or a glimpse at life beyond the grave remains, as always, a mystery.
I was down Chislehurst Caves, as far as I can remember, for 2 sessions. The first one was from the age of about 7, perhaps 6.5 to about 8, till I was 8. Then all the bombing and that eased off, And although my mother had to go down there once every 3 weeks to keep the pitch, we didn't go regularly again until I was about 9. And then it all started up again, and then the V1 started. And I went down there again for about a year, 18 months again then.
I went there with my mother, father's instructions, because he didn't like us being indoors when he was working at nights or he was fire watching. So we joined my aunt and cousin and we went to the caves. And didn't like it for the first week, but then I thought it was wonderful. It was another world down there. Everyone was so friendly.
At its peak, there were 15,000 people sheltering in the caves, creating a brand new community 120 feet under the surface.
No lighting at all, no electric lighting, just candles. So you groping along with candles until you found somewhere hopefully deep enough, and put your blankets down on a piece of corrugated iron, put the candles in a hole in the wall, and that was it.
The atmosphere, when we first went down there, we went in to the main entrance. I mean, you know, outside is a bit scrub, which is still the same. We went through that and into an entrance, and there were 1 or 2 people sitting there, and there was... and they asked us what we wanted. We said we'd like to look around, and they said, yes, okay, fine, have a look around. And that's where we started. We walked from the entrance quite a short way until we entered a very large cavern, which I always thought was the first cavern. It was very large. And the sight that met our eyes, of course, was quite fascinating. Although in the early part of the war, it was crowded, and most of the people were sitting in deck chairs. I spoke to 1 or 2 people, rest of it, and it was one of amazement. I mean, your feet didn't come down because it was quite a surprise.
If there was any good news, there was always a flag at the end of the pitch, and then all this trouble about flags flying for this and that. They're trying to object to it now, and I thought, down the caves there was flags on every bunk. No one could have told them not to wave their flags.
People would come to the caves from all over the southeast as they were in the line of fire of German bombers. Soon whole families would congregate in the caves and stay safe together.
We started off going down the caves with just my mother, myself and my grandmother, and then we grew, and then my aunt and cousins joined us, and we had 2 pitches curtained off.
Uncle Arthur, Auntie Liz on it, their 4 kids. And as it was getting organised, they did want to chuck us out. I think it was the government wanted to chuck us out, but there was a bit of a demonstration, and they decided if you're going to stay, then we'll have to build your bunks. So they've had a great big sort of concerted effort to build bunks and get this canvas just hanging down, and for a little bit of privacy. There wasn't a lot of privacy.
You had bunks and you took your own bed in, and we put curtains round, and we had the curtains across the front, and as I say, we'd got rigged up this picture of a person diving off a springboard, and we called it the dive in, and so that was it. And of course everyone knew the marshal was at the dive in, you know, when my dad was down there.
The sight that met us was quite staggering. I mean, I remember looking across on the left-hand side, and there was a first aid post there.
The caves were equipped with all the services that a town required: education, religion, entertainment and shops. Shelterers did whatever they could to help in this new community.
They opened a tobacconist
given leave.
confectionaries down there next to the canteen. He was in the Air Force, and then my mother did it.
And grandparent.
Grandparents.
Yeah, grandparent and our mother used to do the serving. And
sweets, a few sweets.
People used to queue, didn't they?
Yes, they did. And cigarettes.
They had the gypsies there as well, and they were in the Druids' End.
Different part.
And they used to like to come up for their snuff and stuff like that.
Mm.
My dad and my Uncle Arthur, they had a little pony and trap that they used to take out this L-sand toilets, empty the L-sand toilets.
I ran a club for the children with conjunction of the matron, and I went to get the keys, and she gave me a big carton, and in this carton was loads and loads of things from the American Red Cross for the children, colours that I hadn't seen, and the children's faces. So they all queued up, and they were all given 3 things, a hat, gloves, all sorts, and to crown it was a bar of chocolate, which was something special, and they all went back to their pitches that night, so excited.
Perhaps most importantly in such dangerous times, the caves even had its very own hospital, with 24-hour staff to deal with any emergency.
The only memories I've got are queuing up for cough mixture, and the queues for that, I don't know, I can't believe how long. Every night there was a queue of children queuing up for cough mixture, and thank goodness that's the only time I had to go.
Jill, who scalded herself, I used to take her there every night, and the bottom of the door was always blocked. No air was. I'm going back years when different things were done for schools and that. I'm going back. And the door was blocked and no one else was allowed in while they dressed her leg. And they got it better without any scars. Were marvellous, They really did do some good work down there.
The most memorable case this small facility had to deal with was the birth of a small girl in 1943. Her parents decided to name her after the caves, and so she was christened Cavina in the cave's very own church. The church was built during the war to fulfill the spiritual needs of shelterers. Its ground was consecrated in 1941, and services took place frequently during the war. The layout of this church is similar to traditional Christian buildings. It is built in the shape of a cross, with a dome above the crossing point, and the altar facing opposite the congregation across the longest part of the church. Obviously, during such a hard time, the church was used a lot for those who had lost family members during the war. There was always someone at hand to talk to these bereaved shelterers. When tours resumed after the war, the church became unsafe for visitors, and so this smaller chapel was built to give the guests an idea of what life was like for these people hiding from the bombs. Shortly after the caves were opened to the public, it became apparent that they would have to be carefully organised to maximise the people that could stay. A system was soon introduced that would ensure no space was left empty, and that every square foot of the cave's 23-mile expanse would serve its purpose, protecting the public.
When you first went, you got on a queue of newcomers, and one of the marshals would walk round the caves and you'd all follow him, and he'd find a pitch perhaps that was big enough for just one bunk. And he said, right, who's there? And there's 2 or 3 of you would stop by that pitch and they would bring you a bunk. There's nothing on it, just the bare bunk. And this would happen all the time. There was new people coming. You would queue up near the entrance, get on this queue of newcomers. And they took you all round the caves till they found a spare place.
When you went in the entrance, there was the ticket thing where you showed your ticket, and there was a thing along to buy tickets. But once you got your pitch, you had to stay in that pitch, you see. Well, when you got through there was one part that was dark, and you got through there, and then it started the lights. No one stayed there. I think that was where I think they'd had the food.
My colleagues, Roy and whatnot, we slept on the altar because that was the only place available, because we had a shelter person who was very strict, and we had to behave ourselves, and that was the only place we could sleep on as the shelter, and we had beds down there as well.
With all of the services available in the caves, it was obvious there would have to be a cost in order to maintain them. The price of staying in the caves was set at £6 a week, equivalent to about £7 in today's money. To many this was a good deal, ensuring safety for themselves and their families.
The cave wardens, I think they used to charge us £6 a week. Whether that varied or not, I don't know. When it started, I don't know, but it was £6 to go down there.
We had a card and we had to buy a stamp for £6 a week. And if you missed 3 stamps, that meaning if you didn't go down there for 3 weeks and you had 3 blank spaces on your card, you'd lose your pitch.
We didn't make any friends at all. The atmosphere was so friendly in itself. One thought everybody was your friend. I mean, it was so exciting.
I made lots of friends, and in fact, in the end, it was through the caves I met my husband.
My mother and my grandmother, they made some friends down there.
We'll always remember it. Always.
Yes, that's right.
We won't forget it, will
no,
we?
you'd never forget it,
No.
really, would you?
No.
I
mean, there's thousands,
unique.
thousands down there. Thousands.
Yeah, there were thousands.
In the walks of life, you know.
The caves were split into different sections, each itself split into pitches, which were all numbered. These pitch numbers are still present on many sections of the caves, another reminder at its heroic past. This group of mines, thousands of years old, protected its residents for years, a luxury that many people did not have during the Second World War.
As we come home by train and I looked out the window, you'd see houses that had been destroyed in the night by bombs that was there as we went to the caves, and then coming home, they'd gone.
You had better protection than you would with a surface shelter, and there were loads of those all the way around on the surface. You knew you were better protected, and you had that feeling. Now, when we got to the Druids' Altar, by the time we got there, we were about 100 feet underground. And we don't do now, a bomb did drop on the top, and all we got was just a flutter in the roof. So you felt absolutely safe down there. You couldn't hear a thing.
And the deeper you went, the safer you felt. Some people still take that like they did when they went down the tube station. They take a mighty great big bomb to get through that.
But you couldn't hear a thing. We only knew if there was a warning on, if my dad come and got his tin hat, and he used to get hold of the buckle to say it wouldn't rattle so no one would hear it.
At the entrance there was 2 lights, a red light and a green light, and that just shone whichever. If it was all clear, the green light; if there was an alert on, the red light. And other than that, you wouldn't have known there was anything on. You could not hear a thing. They used to have these broadcasts on the radio from Germany, and Lord Haw used to say how he knew about the caves and all the thousands of people that went down there, and that they'd be sorry that they were all down there because he was going to bomb them out and all the rest of it. But he never could, because when the bombs hit the caves, you never knew. We never knew they hit the caves.